of weeks ago I did an introduction to James, and just very briefly to remind you, so James who wrote this letter is Jesus' brother. Not just in the sense of, oh, this is my brother at church, but his literal brother. This is Mary's son, Mary and Joseph's son. So when we read this, I think at the back of our minds, I would encourage you to bear in mind who's writing this letter. Okay, this was the first letter that we've got. So this was the earliest letter. It's not the earliest, the Gospels. Mark was the first Gospel. This is the first letter. And just to give you an idea of the context, in the context of this then, this is a persecuted church. So we've had the time after Jesus was resurrected, the church grows, right? It expands, starts to spread. Okay, persecution comes in. We know about Paul becoming Saul, and Saul becoming Paul, and all the things around that. Okay, but now the church is starting to become a bit obnoxious as far as the local politicians are concerned. And although today politicians might get upset with us, they don't kill us on the whole. But in this particular time period, they could. So the Christians, and we're talking on the whole here, Jewish Christians, are escaping the persecution that they are now suffering for being Christians. And they've scattered. They're trying to find quiet places to live out their lives. Okay? And James writes into that context. Okay? And he's writing his letter to these people who are now moved. This isn't a letter to the people in Jerusalem. He's leading the church in Jerusalem. So he's talking on a daily basis to the people who stay. This is to all the people who've gone, who've had to scatter. And these are not people scattering thinking, oh, I know, I'd like to leave and go to Billericay, that's a nice place to live. Okay, these are people who are getting out of there. Okay, so that gives you context of the letter. Whilst we were actually singing and so on, God underlined one thing out of "You May Be Brave." Okay, and it's important to remember this right at the start of what I'm saying in the sermon, and that is the phrase, "For you are for us, you are not against us." And that's that phrase we sing to the Lord, and it's a declaration of truth. But into this letter, the starting point, the thing that James would have assumed straight off, but perhaps we need to say, God was for people who were receiving this letter. He was not against them. And he is for us, whatever our current situation is. So whatever situation you are in at this moment, God is for you. He is not against you. The other thing I'd say about the letter, and before I expand it any further, is a little bit about men and women. James is a man writing this letter. Okay? This is not a touchy-feely letter. He is not coming along and going, sympathy, sympathy, sympathy. Okay? He is not dismissing the situation that people are in. He gets it. He's living it. His brother was murdered by these people. They nailed his brother to a cross. He knows what's going on, how real it is, the emotions involved. He gets it. So he's not writing unsympathetically, harshly, telling people, oh, suck it up. Right? None of that's implied. He understands the sympathy. He understands coming alongside. But he's got a short letter to write. He's trying to give some information across. And so it can come out quite unsympathetic and sound, he's not doing that. He's writing something important here, and he's trying to be punchy. Okay? Now, the book of James as a whole, let's get it clear, is a classic book of wisdom. So many of the commentators that I've read have suggested that, in a sense, James is a book of Proverbs. And what he's doing is he's taking catchy sayings, things that you can remember, and he's giving them to these Christians, okay, and saying to them, here are some things. And there's almost a sentence which you can remember, a sound bite. Also, when I was sharing this idea with somebody else, they said, there's a sound bite, and then a quick bit of illustration behind it, okay, or a bit of expansion behind it. But he wants people to remember the sound bites. Something that when you're in that moment, you can bring that sentence back to mind. Bang, there it is. How do I behave in this situation? What do I do now? What must I remember here? Right, he's trying to give us this structure so that whatever circumstance you're in type of thing, here's a quick thing to remember in this scenario. This is how you live in this situation. Okay? And he's trying to be as helpful as he can be. So, the bit that, do you want to stick the, oh, Anna's now got the bit. Do you want to stick the bit up on the screen? So, Clive asked me to talk about James 1, 5-11, so I'll read it. But obviously it's in context, so I'll need to just give it the context. Okay, so James 1, 5-11, very quick. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. The brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position, but the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers a plant. Its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away, even while he goes about his business. That's the bits I've been sent, okay? Just, it seems a bit backwards, but let me just put it back into context for you. So read the first bits up to that point. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations. Greetings. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James, straight away, right at the beginning, makes it clear that the stuff he's about to talk about is meaty. These are serious things in life. This is not milk. This is chunky stuff. Which means it's hard to swallow and needs to be chewed over. He wants us to think about what is written. He knows it's going to be challenging. Okay? He's talking about maturity. We, as a church, say we want to present everyone mature in Christ. So we're dealing with chunky issues. It is not, I've got what, 25 minutes. I'm not being flippant, but if I cover over it quickly, just like James was being flippant. Okay? But, let's see if we can work together. So, by this point, the passage I've got, James has given you us one proverb. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face trials of many kinds. That's a catchy one, isn't it? But it is helpful, and I do remember it. Okay. He then goes on, the two that I'm going to look at is, in verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God. That's one. And the second one, the brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position. And then he elaborates on it. Okay? So, 3 sayings is brought in. Right? I'm doing 2 and 3. But to understand 2 and 3 fully, we need to also bear in mind the fact that it already started with number 1. Okay? He's writing to these persecuted Christians. They're scattered. I don't know about you, I've been looking at the Syrian Christians and the Iraqi Christians, and I've been thinking about this situation. They are facing today, the Jewish church, or the Jewish Christians facing them. Their faith is their life. They don't change, they die. ISIS kills people for what they believe. They label them and they kill them. Full stop. The only thing you've got is if they label your house, you've got 24 hours to get out and to leave them the tax, or they'll kill you. Okay? It is as real today as it is when James was writing this book. So I thought, what must that be like? What must it be like for somebody to come to your house, paint a symbol on your house, and you now have 24 hours to get out or die? It's incredible, isn't it? What do you feel? What do you think? Well, yeah, absolutely, but there's so much more, isn't there? There's so many other things. And so James is writing to people that have been fleeing from this situation. So I was just trying to get my head around it. If this happened to me, things that might pop into my head if I was fleeing in this way. What's happening, God? Why is this happening? What am I going to do now? Absolutely. And where would your confidence be? You'd be rock bottom. You would have very little self-confidence. You'd be afraid of everything and anyone. You might literally have nothing apart from closing your back. And you're going into a foreign country and you might not even be able to speak the language. Now, James is writing to people in that scenario. So he picks out his first 3 points that aim at supporting those individuals as they go into that scenario, as they're in it. So, James says to them something which sounds hard, but is very important. The first thing he says is, consider it. All behaviour starts with thought. There is no behaviour that you have that does not start with a thought in your head. Some of it might be so commonplace that the thought takes less than a millisecond, you don't even notice it pass through your brain. But there is no behaviour that does not start without a thought. And what James says straight away in that first parable, the one that Clive dealt with in more detail, is simply this. Your attitude will decide how things go from here. If you take the attitude, oh no, these terrible things are happening to me, and fully understandably just get wrapped up in the emotion of the awful, awful things that are just happening to you, and you get stuck there, then you're stuck there, and life will not get better. But if you can change your attitude, if you consider that God is for you, and can see that God is doing something through this, that will bring you benefit, and maybe others benefit, then things will change. So for me, many of you know my story. I was a teacher, damaged vocal cords, couldn't speak, had to learn how to speak all over again, and I was forced out of teaching. I was made to retire. I didn't want to retire, they made me retire. Okay? So then from that point, there was a part of me which was, if I'm being honest, resentful. And it was resentful both with the head that made me leave and God who'd allowed that to happen. Well, it wasn't why me, but it was, I couldn't want this. Why is this happening? And it was only nearly 4 years later when I was starting to see the Ferry Project grow and starting to understand that. God came to me and said, you have to make a decision. Because I was continually, in my head, harking back to teaching. Oh, do you think I could? Is it worth it? I even was having dreams about going back into teaching, right? And I'd wake up literally in a sweat, because if I did go back into teaching, I lost my pension, and at that time that was a major part of our income. And I'd wake up going, you stupid idiot, what you did? Why did you? I'd wake up believing I'd done it, and then I'd have to get my head back in order. Oh, I haven't done it. But God came to me and said, this has to stop. And I had to then come to a point where I agreed with God and could say, okay, that was the right thing to do, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. And I had to change my attitude. Now that process wasn't quick, it didn't take me a day, it took a period of time. But in the changing of that attitude, what it did was, for me, lots of things changed. So I was a lot happier about doing the ferry project. I was a lot happier in the role I gained, and now I've grown a lot, and I have a lot of satisfaction. And I can look back on the time when I was teaching with a great deal of satisfaction about what I did then, and think, well, that was one part of my life, this is another part of my life, and it's all okay. And now it doesn't bother me. I don't get into a cold sweat, I don't get upset about it. It's okay. But I had to change my attitude. Otherwise, I could still be here going, but God did this to me, and I can't teach. It's I'm resentful and angry and cross and bitter. Right? Instead, God's enabled me to do stuff which has had a positive impact on other people. So attitude is vital. Hard, but vital. And so, even into this situation, James was writing, change your attitude. You have to consider it pure joy when you face these trials. Now, how does that, the whole thing is that what he then goes on to say is, because God's going to teach you something in this that will bless you. Okay? That is incredibly hard to believe when you're going through a difficult time. God's going to teach you something in this, you're not going to enjoy it though. So it's not going to be a blessing. But he does. If you will be trained by it, God will teach you something through it. Something that will bless you, and very often others. He will work through you, and he will bring a blessing, because that is who he is. Because God is for us, he is not against us. And he has the power to change things and take things that are awful and bring good out of them. Okay? So if we move quickly on, that's the context then. We've now heard that James is saying, change the way you think, make sure it's positive, accept that God's going to bring something good out of this, that you can grow out of this, even though it's awful, there's potential here. Okay? And we get to the end of verse 4, and I love the contrast. People who write problems do this. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So, if you've learnt your lesson, you won't lack anything. Full stop. If any of you lacks wisdom, then he kicks straight away. So if you haven't learnt all the lessons yet, if you don't think you're mature and complete yet, if you lack wisdom, what do? Ask God. Ask God, who will give you generously without finding fault. God will come in and intercede on that level as well. So, you're learning, you're growing, you've got the right attitude, you want to change, you want to be different, you're prepared to accept that God's doing something through this that will bring benefit to others, even if it doesn't feel like it at the moment. But, as I was saying, the first question I'd be asking God, as I landed on the foreign soil, and I couldn't speak the language, and I have nothing, is what do I do now? Now, notice that James says, if any of you lacks wisdom. He uses a very particular term there. What he doesn't say is, if any of you lacks knowledge. And let's be clear, wisdom and knowledge are different things. Okay? So what James is not saying is, if you don't understand Ask God and he'll help you to understand. No, that might be something else. And maybe, generously, God might help you in that way. That is not what's being said here. Okay? And he isn't saying he'll tell you the ins and outs of the whole thing. Oh no, that's not what he's saying either. In fact, you might never know. You might go to your grave, and it might be in heaven when you find out, can I actually go, oh, okay. Get that? Does that make sense then? But that's not what's being promised here. He's promising wisdom. So what is wisdom? We had some examples earlier, and we start to touch on it. What is biblical wisdom? What's wisdom according to the Bible? Now, the sad thing, the bit that's missing, is there is no definition. It doesn't actually say it, but what it does do is it tells us, gives us clues, points to it, and in several different places it points. And the place that I want to point to today is Ecclesiastes. So Ecclesiastes is a book written about Solomon, and was written as a type of essay, as far as we can tell, going through Solomon's wise sayings and things that he did, and all the rest of it. And right at the end, so this is a book written about wisdom, okay? And right at the end, we get this. So, Ecclesiastes 12. He's the good one, I'd say 5. Let's see who gets it first. Here you go, Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 30. This is how he finishes it, this is the person who's writing this. Now, all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. So here is the conclusion of the book on wisdom. Right? Fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. Jesus put it a different way in John 15. If you love me, you will obey my commands. Wisdom is doing what God would do in this situation at this moment of time. When we agree with God, we're being wise. So when we're saying, ask for wisdom, what we're actually saying is, God, what would you do now? Not what would I do now? What would you do now? Jesus, that's right, Jesus put it this way. He said, I do not do anything except what the Father tells me. That's wisdom. We talk about Solomon, the Bible refers to Solomon. When Solomon was being wise because he did what God told him to do. Solomon was incredibly stupid because at times he did stuff where it got him written down what he should do, and he still did the opposite. He was wise only when he did what God told him to. Because the Bible doesn't cover every circumstance, does it? It doesn't cover, should I write this Twitter? Should I fill in this bit on Facebook? Should I drive a car? There's nowhere in the Bible where you can go, that's in Revelation 17, do not drive a car when you're 89 because you might not be able to do it safely. It doesn't happen, does it? We have decisions every day, every minute of every day, which the Bible actually doesn't directly tell us what to do. And we need to know from God, what do I do in this moment now? Yes, what do I do now? And he says, wisdom is, do it my way. Now Jesus had learned the ability to talk to God so easily that he could walk down the street and God would say, talk to that person. He went over and spoke to him. Oh, there's got to be somebody up in that tree, just invite him to dinner. Oh, Nicodemus, I'll come to lunch with you. Right? Now that's where Jesus was. Now we struggle with that. I struggle with it, what about you? Right? But we do get, the Holy Spirit does come along and say, do this. Now, if we believe wisdom's knowledge, then we might well go, what on earth do you want me to do that for? I want you to 5-page essay, please, explain to me why I should go and talk to that person, because I don't get it myself. Or, you want me to put that there? Why do you want me to put that there? I don't understand, don't get it. Please, God, can you explain to me with all the diagrams and everything else, why I should do that. Right? God doesn't work that way. He goes, I want you to do that, just do it. Jesus went, oh right, oh, you want me to do that? God, don't go and do that then. The disciples were starting to learn it with Jesus, weren't they? So, tax collectors come up to Jesus and go, we want your tax. Jesus turns around to Peter and says, I shouldn't have to pay this tax, temple tax. I'm paying my own dad. That's stupid. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Peter, go chuck a fishing line in the lake, pull out a fish, you'll find the tax in the fish's mouth. Now, what a stupid thing to say, right? But Peter doesn't argue, does he? He doesn't go, excuse me, can you explain how that's going to happen? Peter goes along, chucks his line out, pulls out the fish, there's a coin, goes and pays the tax. Because when God says something, it is wisdom. And Peter did not need to understand why he should throw the thing. When Jesus said to Peter, get out of the boat and walk on water, Peter didn't ask for the physics of how that was going to work. He started to do it. Now, when Peter doubted, when Peter didn't believe what Jesus was saying, he sank. And that's why James says, if you don't believe it, don't expect to get stuff out of this, because you're double-minded. Okay? If you're going to sit there and argue with God for 40 days about whether you're going to do it or not, don't expect to get stuff out of that argument, because it's not going to happen. Because God's told you very clearly what to do. Do it. Now, there's a whole discussion we could have, and we haven't got time today, about how do you know it's God telling you what to do with stuff. We've talked about that in the past. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the future. There's plenty of places in James where we can talk about it. But I'm telling you, there are times when you know God's told you to do something, and you go, I don't know about that. Can we have a recount, please? Can we have a quick discussion about this? Because that's a little bit close. You may be brave. Well, today I'm not feeling particularly brave. When we know what God is saying, He doesn't have to explain it to us. We don't have to intellectually get it. We should just do it, because that's wisdom. And God will tell us what to do. The question is, are you prepared to listen? And this will sound brutal, but I want you to think about this. Okay? This passage implies that if you've got a decision to make and you go to God and say, what do you want us to do? God will tell you like that. There's no implication here. It doesn't say here you have to wait 40 days, pray fast, stand on your head, talk to 400 people, read 7 books, listen to 10 videos, or watch 10 videos. He says God gives it freely. So if you want to know what to do, God's telling you. The question is, are you listening? He is telling you. I've had loads of people who, because they didn't want to do something, would be saying to me, I don't want to do it. I don't know what God wants me to do. Right? And I can sit there, I've said it to clients loads of times, but I can tell them what God wants them to do. Blind in the obvious what God wants them to do. Right? If they want, I'll stick a big 4-foot poster on the wall and say, God says this is what you should do. If that's the only way they'll believe it. But they wouldn't believe it then anyway. Because they don't want to do it. It really is not a question of do you know. It's a question of do you want to. Is it what you want? So, hard word. Right? Difficult. Please chew it over. Please chew it over. Okay? I've had lots of times where I've been asking God, what do you want me to do? And I've got off from those. So, I'm not claiming any super spirituality. But this is clear. James is clear. God wants to give us that advice very freely. Okay. Now, so, that's number one then. If anyone lacks wisdom, you should ask God. That's the bit to remember. Who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But but when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like the wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. The nice thing is, even if it takes us 2 years to come to a decision, or in my case 5, God still loves us, still cares for us, still guides us in other areas. And eventually when we come to agree with him, he's very gracious about it and we go, I told you so. Okay. He goes, well done. So that's the first one. The second one is in many ways harder, but I've got less to say. The second one is, the brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position, but the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and burns the plant. In the same way, the rich man will fade away even while he goes about his business. The refugees probably have nothing. I asked Leslie if she'd mind me illustrating. So Leslie lived in Zimbabwe. She and her husband Hamish were both school teachers. He was a head teacher. In Zimbabwe, while they were living there, before the Troubles, they had a good life. They had a nice house, they had servants, they were able to live in a good way. Troubles came, everything went. I don't know how much money, I'm not in person enough to ask how much money she left Zimbabwe with, but I can guarantee you they left with a lot less than they'd had before. Their life was changed and they arrived in Britain, fleeing all the troubles in Zimbabwe. Now, thankfully, we have a pretty common language, not quite the same, pretty common. Okay? And Leslie's been able to make a new life here, starting from scratch, rebuilding all over again. And you've done it very gracefully. Right? Well, that is hard, is it not? For everything you've got to go. These people were in a hard place. If they were fortunate, they might have come out with some possessions in a suitcase or whatever. But on the whole, they lost everything. Where they'd grown up, all their memories, all those things. They had one or two precious items might have been with them. They might have lost everything. And James writes this. And what he's saying here is, possessions are nothing. Of course they make life easier. But possessions don't decide who you are. Remember who you are. Well, it's not even what you like, Christine, it's beyond that. You and I, if we are Christians, are sons and daughters of the living God. And Jesus is my brother. Now that is status. That allows me to stand before Queen Elizabeth easily on equal footing. That allows me to stand before the President of the United States. That allows me to stand in front of Bill Gates with his billions and billions. That allows me to stand in front of anyone, and I am not beneath them. Well, may they be the same. Remember, that's what he's saying. It doesn't matter. The world will look down on you, and unfortunately at times we will fall into it. We can look down on people. And in our current society, riches and fame have been elevated, so we have ridiculous situations where you have talk shows on the radio from people giving advice about life and what life have they had. My daddy was rich and I have a lot of money. And then they can feel that they can spout on about how to live your life. Why? Well, my daddy was rich and I've got a lot of money, so I must be great and very wise. And you'll find Radio 1, on Radio 1, they'll be interviewing people and you'll think, who is this person? What have you ever done in your life? Well, it's about my daddy or my mummy, or I know somebody who was. There's loads of agony aunts that So there's lots of situations where the world will honour people because of possessions, not because of anything else. Okay? And we can fall into that trap. I was just thinking about it this week. This week, I've heard on the radio and seen on the TV 4 or 5 different times this person has died. A singer. This person has died. And, somebody else who's done something. And then you might just catch a glimpse of 3,000 people drowned in the Mediterranean trying to get from Africa to Italy. So they spend 20 minutes talking about a singer who once sang a song that made people happy for 2 minutes. And they dismiss with a breath 3,000 people drowning in the middle of the Mediterranean. And what's the difference? He's rich, they're not. Therefore he matters, they don't. It's awful. These people were the people on boats in the Mediterranean. So James writes to them, the brother in humble circumstances ought to take pride in his high position. And then to everybody else, and may I say, the second bit is to us. There is no person in this room, I don't care what your circumstances are at the moment, however bad it feels, you are not on a boat in the middle of the Mediterranean with nothing. Right? And this is what he says to us. But the one who is rich should take pride in his low position, because he will pass away like a wild flower, for the sun rises with the scorching heat and withers the plant, its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich man will fade away, even while he goes about his business. Whatever we say, our money can go. And if our position, our status, and everything who we are is based upon what we own, that's how long it can last. So we need to remember who we are and who they are. Right? And we are sons of the Most High God, daughters of the Most High God, brothers and sisters of Jesus Christ. Potentially so are they. So Father, I pray that you take this word and you would use it. And Lord, all the bits that we need to chew over ourselves, I pray you'd help us to do that. You teach us, Lord. May we be your students, your pupils. May we learn. Help us when we're hurting. Help us. Help us. Help us to go beyond the hurt. It's so difficult. It is so difficult. But thank you for your love. Thank you for your care. Thank you that you bless us. Thank you for wise people who can give us direction. Thank you for your word. And we give you this week. I do pray for Clive Fiona. I ask you for blessing on him. But Lord, take our weeks, and I pray that this week, for each of us, when we hear you say, do this, make us brave enough to do it. Help us, Lord.